California Congressman Khanna. He is a member of the House Oversight and Reform and Armed Services Committees. Always good to see you, my friend. So, Sabrina Singh told me she does not agree that the U.S. is in a wider regional conflict. But my colleague, NBC's Keir Simmons, told me those in the region believe they are in a regional war. What's your assessment?
Well, we need to make a distinction between the strikes that were conducted in Iraq and Syria, where I think the president took appropriate action. Our service members were killed. This has happened before, where the United States has responded to make sure that our service members are never targeted. And the strikes on the Houthis, which I do think is escalatory, which hasn't helped keep the commercial lines open, and where I have called and said that the president needs to come to Congress.
So do you at all fear these retaliatory strikes could lead to a direct conflict or a wider type of regional conflict with Iran?
I actually give the president and his team credit in that the strikes so far have been proportional. They've been targeted. They have not done what some of the Republican senators have said, go hit Iran. I actually think the president here has shown restraint but force, in similar to his approach on Ukraine. And so far, I think he has done the appropriate thing. We've had to take some action with 3 of our service members killed, and he's taken action that I think is forceful but not escalatory.
Okay, and to that point, since these strikes are in response to the loss of the 3 American military personnel, should an appropriate response necessarily strike targets that include Iranian military personnel? I mean, is that at all a goal?
Well, there I do think if we extend beyond these targets in Iraq and Syria and actually hit Iran, we really risk another Middle East war. And I certainly think, one, the president would need to come to Congress for something like that. And I also don't think the American people want us to get into war with Iran, which is why I give the president and his team credit for being forceful, decisive, making it absolutely clear that you cannot kill American service members without consequences, but not escalating the situation with Iran, not getting us into another Middle East war.
Well, some of your Republican colleagues, I'm sure you know, they say that the Biden administration should not have, quote, telegraphed its intentions. They shouldn't have waited so long to respond militarily. And here's what Sabrina Singh told me about that.
I think the American people deserve to know what our strategy is and how we're going to hold people accountable. Again, we didn't get into details. We didn't get into specific timelines. We said that we would hold these forces, these groups accountable at a time and place of our choosing, and we left it at that. And that's exactly what you saw last night.
So do you think the administration telegraphed its intentions, and did they do it for a reason beyond just the American people deserve to know?
No, I mean, I think the president has been very clear that if you strike American troops in Iraq, in Syria, the United States is going to respond. We've responded before October 7th. When our troops are struck or killed, of course we're going to take a decisive action. What is irresponsible is some of the rhetoric from Republican senators saying don't start a war in Iran. The irony is that the person who's not saying that is Donald Trump, and because he knows that the American people don't want another war in the Middle East. And I think the president here should be applauded for taking decisive action, but not escalating with Iran.
How much do you think these increased threats and the attacks against U.S. forces in the region would subside if some sort of a ceasefire agreement were able to be reached between Israel and Hamas?
Well, I certainly think it would help de-escalate the tension in the region. It could help de-escalate the tensions, particularly in the Red Sea with commercial shipping. And we need, in my view, a permanent ceasefire with the release of all hostages. And the president needs to continue to push that case. That ultimately is what's going to reduce the violence in the region and ultimately what will make it our interest secure.
And you are one of those leaders of a bipartisan group of more than a couple of dozen lawmakers who sent that letter to President Biden last week saying that he must seek authorization from Congress before launching further strikes in Yemen. Does that, sir, apply to the retaliatory strikes in Iraq and Syria? And if not, will it apply at any point?
I don't think it applies to action taken within Iraq and Syria, where our troops have been present for many years, when our troops have been hit, and they're taking action to defend those troops and prevent further violence against our troops. That's very different than opening up a new theater of conflict, which is what we're doing with the Houthis, where we're striking Yemen, one of the poorest countries, and it hasn't been effective. I mean, the president himself there has said that the shipping lines still are compromised. There, I do think they should come to the Congress, and they should listen to our Gulf allies, the Saudis and UAE. I mean, they were in war with Yemen and the Houthis for 7 years, and they realized it really wasn't working. And there, I think, having a ceasefire with the release of all hostages, which William Burns and Tony Blinken and others are working on, is the best way to de-escalate and also keep the shipping lines open.
Do you have any certainty that the administration has consulted with our allies in the region who do have that experience you speak of with the Houthis over that war for 7 years?
I know they have. I know they're closely in touch with the Saudis and UAE, and I know the Saudis and UAE are cautioning them that you can't just militarily win against the Houthis. I mean, it was a 7-year war that finally the Saudis have realized they need to have a truce in Yemen. And so my hope is that while the administration has taken decisive action, particularly concerning our 3 service members we lost, that in a parallel track, they're moving very, very aggressively to have a permanent ceasefire and the release of all hostages. That ultimately is what's going to bring peace, which is going to lower tensions, and what I believe the vast majority of the American people want.
Okay. Let's pivot here to the border situation and Speaker Mike Johnson's statement that a border deal from the Senate would be DOA in the House. Here is what he told my colleague Kristen Welker on Meet the Press today. Take a listen.
The reason the presidency is imperiled, as your opening monologue stated, is because this is an abject failure of leadership. The American people are done with this. The border has to be secured. The president has the authority right now. He doesn't need another act of Congress. He could do it right now, but he's unwilling to do it.
Give me a sense of how critical the border situation is, and can the president do more if Speaker Johnson refuses to advance this Senate bill, or would Republicans block him from doing so if it's not in their political self-interest to allow him any potential success there?
Well, the president needs the resources. He's been begging Congress. He says, give me the money for more Border Patrol agents. Give me the money for more judges and immigration attorneys so we can quickly process these asylum claims and we're not overrun. And the Congress is, on the Democratic side, is willing to give those resources. Speaker Johnson isn't willing to bring that kind of bill up to Congress. And that's a shame that the Republicans are playing more politics with the situation.
All right, California Congressman Khanna, always a pleasure. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate it.